Yeah, you're right. It was Ewing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's starting. They starting. You didn't even do you didn't even do the
The
protection.
mantra.
That's probably what it is.
Yeah.
You gotta do the mantra,
Yeah.
brother. Do the
Okay.
protection,
Yeah.
the
Let me pull
mantra,
that up real quick.
the
Yeah. The
mantra of
monster
protection.
mantra.
You got it.
Yeah, I got it. Here we go.
We should have did that before we even started.
I know. Yeah. Well, this is to all the ancestors, all the ancestors who fought and died for our freedom. hmm Through the power,
Yeah, but
force, might.
what I was saying, see, this this is why it goes over people's heads. All right, hello, you hear?
Yeah, I'm here. Okay. Um, Through the power,
You were
force,
breaking up
might,
for
and
a
will.
minute.
Oh, I'm
Go
breaking
ahead.
up.
I hear
Yeah.
you now.
We both doing that in
I can
and
hear you
out.
now. Go
So,
ahead.
okay. Through the power, force, might, and will of the great
Right.
nothingness of the almighty powers of the great nothingness of infinite beingness, of infinite, endless, limitless, invisible life from which comes the absolute all that was, all that is, and all that is being and becoming realized into physical realization, actualization, and form as we all now will and commanded to be, is now being and becoming an active force of higher consciousness and an active force of infinite intelligence within us all now. Being and becoming the great primordial indigo kundalini flame, now whirling and ascending up our spine from our root chakra to our central heart chakra on up to our royal crown chakra, igniting our royal crown chakra, illuminating our first eye. The Lord Amunel Dragra, the hidden priestly grandmaster magi dragon god son king and queen, igniting all of the 72 chakras in our first eye, our 72 primordial dragon god son kings and queens, and all of our legions of 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 armies 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 of armies, willing all of the powers, all of the forces, all the elements, all of the essences, all the dark matter and dark energy within the absolute all into being, becoming all of our will's servants, serving all of our will's objectives, intentions, and desires, crystallizing them all into physical realization, actualization, and form. Now, being and becoming an active force of unstoppable energy, helping us all now by bringing all out war, judgment, death, and destruction upon all of the corrupted, multidimensional, negative, archonic energies and their white supremacists, or wannabe white supremacist, European American, imperialistic, globally counterfeit spirits running the surface of the earth with their quantum computer technology, AI computer technology, centralized banking system, fiat currency, military technology, and new world order, enslaving the entire black primordial kundalini race and killing us with their technology, taking us off of our true evolutionary path until now, because now is the time of their fall, as all out war, judgment, death, and destruction is upon them all, as we are now free to ascend back to conscious unity through the power, force, and might and will of the great nothingness of the almighty powers of the great nothingness of infinite beingness, of infinite, endless, limitless, invisible life from which comes the absolute all that was, all that is, and all that is being and becoming realized as we are now will and commanded to be unto the entire omniverse, earth, and physical and spiritual matrix and heavenlies, from beyond the entire omniverse, earth, and physical and spiritual matrix and heavenlies, now completely taken over unconsciously, judging and destroying the entire omniverse, earth, and physical and spiritual matrix and heavenlies, being and becoming the absolute all that was, all that is, and all that is being and becoming, as we all now will and commanded to be as one. Abracadabra.
That's so change up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad we added that so-called white supremacists because that's one thing that irks me with our people is that we're projecting their supremacy and
hmm
we're making them supremacy. We're
Yeah.
making them by even perpetuating the ideas. We
Well,
gotta stop. We gotta stop.
yeah, we got to change the ideas. We got to bring it. Remember,
That's a spell.
who's the, yeah, well, the language they gave us is a spell. English. It's a fucking spell.
I don't give them the credibility of English because I don't give them the credibility of English, but I see how they've constructed it right over time.
Mm-hmm.
Really, at the end of the day, English is basically um, it's really not a language. It's just, you know what I'm saying, watered down version of Latin and shit. So you're looking at
Mm-hmm.
A Latin derivative, a Latin derivative.
It's a derivative of a lot of languages.
Yeah,
However,
other
we
languages, but
we
it's a.
we we hmm?
Go ahead.
we just have to learn how to use it to cast our own spells.
Right. This is what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying. I don't give them the credibility for developing the English language and everything because it's basically an international language, a lingua franca. A lingua franca is a language that's used commercially for different when two different nations are doing business. They have to have a lingua franca, right?
Okay. Uh-huh.
English was a lingua franca that was spoke by the indigenous people here and the people over there in what we're referring to as Europe today.
Okay. So it was kind of like a language that was kind of easy for everyone to sort of kind of understand.
Exactly. Yeah,
To
it's
be able.
literally called, you look up the word lingua franca. Lingua franca. But yeah, let's go back to this gully war. Let's see what our real ancestors was doing.
Okay. Yeah. Let's go back to the war.
Where the plantation was. Give them information about the plantation. Where they can hit them. Where this is hidden. Where that's hidden. Letting their comrades know where to go and what to do. See, the Gullah Wars were vicious, but they had cohesiveness. They had the mindset of either we'll take our freedom.
That's the cohesiveness we need today.
Mm-hmm.
The cohesiveness that I'm promoting amongst my people constantly. We need a cohesiveness, man.
Well, that means we need a foot on our necks. That's what brings us together. When they put their foot on our necks, unfortunately, that's when that happens.
I mean, when did they take it off?
Yeah, that's true.
Like at the end of the day, they extended they gave us the appearance of extended certain so-called freedoms that we have, but we're getting to the point. A lot of us are getting to the point where we're realizing that we're still in a level of bondage, and
Mm-hmm.
this is why we take more understanding. Because at first, like when I was in the freedom fighting movement, at that level, I was on it, and I was like, this is not the answer. What we're doing here, protesting, and then also basically it went from protesting, and then it went from romanticism of, and then nostalgia of our unity, and then going over our history. I mean, it never really panned out to anything practical.
Yeah,
Never.
it's like yeah,
So
that sounds like a
my
routine to
journey was
me.
always based in that. And now that I know the answer is we need to govern over ourselves. That was the answer I had years ago, but then it got more solidified in my mind. Like that's the key. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
I got a lot more evidence now to show that the key is for us to govern over ourselves. Remove
Yeah,
ourselves from their. We have to remove ourselves from their political society
and
interest,
jurisdiction.
right? Meaning
Mm-hmm.
we would have to give up our allegiance, political allegiance to that entity,
Mm-hmm.
and move it over to something that we created. Seriously, literally.
Yeah,
And that's
man.
what
But
none of our people are talking about this at this point. We're thinking we're still gonna have some vision of
reparations.
freedom still intertwined in the affairs of this European bullshit. Like
Yeah.
We'll die trying.
Mm-hmm.
Hundreds of angry slaves going to town, plantation to plantation, overwhelming everything in their paths. And they was killing everything. People were getting their heads chopped off.
Even sellout ass niggas was getting their heads chopped the fuck off.
People were getting set on fire. And they didn't care. This included women and children. Because you have to understand this. Yes, that may be graphic. But now, it was their turn to do the killing. It was their turn to do the raping. It was their turn to cut people open. It was their turn to cut heads off. They would ransack anything in their path and slaughter everybody. The first war began in 1739 called the Stono Rebellion. They went to a local gun shop and they took all the weapons. They killed the shop owner, and as they collected the weapons and they left, they all chanted, "Freedom, freedom, freedom, freedom." It was so loud, freedom, 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 freedom. It was so loud that it echoed throughout the town. Everybody heard it. As I've stated, the war lasted for over 100 years, but the most important one took place probably about a decade before the Civil War kicked off. These runaway warriors lit up the United States military. Yeah, you heard that right. The United States military got their ass handed to them. A little more than 400 escaped slaves.
That really ain't saying much, but that's good. That was a good thing. That really, because at the time their military wasn't much at the time, but
yeah, at that time,
defeated nearly 12,000 of the United States finest. They led them off into the swamps and other areas. And since they knew the location, they were aware of the surroundings. The U.S. had no chance. Now, back in 1812, Spain was at war with the U.S.
Really, realistic, it was more like a combination of the military and the militia groups that were joining forces.
So over territory in Florida. Now, Spain, they got word of what was going on. So they started giving weapons to the escaped slaves. They started giving them weapons, and they started training them. And that army grew. The army grew fast. They were so aware of the surroundings out there in Florida. Every time there was a war, they lit their asses up. They had no chance. It was a one-sided battle.
Right. That was that he just gave more evidence that we was always here, homie. We was always, we had, so it was like how in where in certain Asian countries where they do guerrilla warfare against
Vietnam.
Yeah, where they were doing guerrilla warfare, they had so much insight about the landscape that they was able to defeat their ass and shit.
Yeah.
That's one of the wars that America don't want to talk about, Korea War. They lost that shit.
Oh, the Korean War, yo.
Yeah, they lost that shit because of guerrilla warfare, bro. They couldn't handle them Viet Congs. They couldn't handle them.
Well, that's Vietnam, the Viet Congs, but I don't know too much about the Korean War.
Now, it was either Vietnam or the Korean War, where
you know,
I maybe to mix the two wars up. But what I'm saying is guerrilla warfare.
Yeah,
right?
Well,
guerrilla warfare was their advantage.
Yeah, well, that could have been the same tactics in both of the wars. That's how the communists took control of China, through guerrilla warfare. That's one of the rules in the 48 Laws of Power. Assume formlessness until the right moment, then you take shape. You take form at the right moment, at the right time, and you strike a heavy blow at that moment. And then you just disappear. Become formless.
Communism usually invades most countries based on people entering into the political arena of that country, and then their communist political ideas. So You know what I'm saying? That's how communism invaded China. That's how communism invaded China.
Well, I read that in the 48 Laws of Power.
They got more politically. What'd you say?
I read that story in the 48 Laws of Power,
where they defeated the Chinese.
The Chinese nationalists, how they came into power to defeat the.
So they came into power militarily.
Yeah, and it was through guerrilla warfare.
That's not guerrilla warfare. Yeah, that's not how it happened in Russia.
Oh no, not Russia, but I'm just talking about China.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, just that particular one, not in general.
So the U.S. was getting attacked from angles that they had no idea how to respond to. There was a very prominent town in Suwanee, Florida. In Suwanee, they didn't need white folks for anything. They didn't need any assistance.
Remarkable story. It's overlooked not just by filmmakers. It's not well known in popular culture, and in fact, it's been overlooked by historians, if you can believe it.
Hey, people don't know that some of those tribes are still in Florida to this day.
Mm.
In the early 18th century, two groups in particular fled the colonial South into Spanish Florida, into the Everglades. One of these groups were Seminoles, who were migrating from the various colonies, just trying to avoid.
You see how they try to make it look pale skin? That was way darker than that.
White colonists were.
They were dark.
Also, they were light skinned. They were just a light skinned brother.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of
people
times.
Who were fleeing and trying to create a free life for themselves.
Yeah, they light skin would be my complexion.
In fact, the Spanish crown offered runaway slaves their freedom if they would defend the land for the crown, for the Spanish. So a mixed society emerged in the Everglades.
Look, this is the deception in how they speak. They're going to use a lot of language. They're going to use a lot of language from their perspective. Like there's a lot of nomenclature that it doesn't validate who we are. It's just the European psychology. How every time I hear them explain it, if I was to have to translate this from their perspective to what really happened, you you got to translate it. It ain't just, you can't just listen to her and be like, okay, yeah, she's giving you an expert. Yeah, their science is biased. Science is biased, bro. I'm trying to tell you.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Intermarriage, family intermingling between these runaway slaves and the Seminoles. And in fact, the first legally sanctioned black free town in the North American continent was.
You see how she went from Seminole to black?
Mm-hmm.
You feel me? In one instance, were they Seminoles or were they black? What were they?
Yeah.
You feel me?
Spanish,
yeah.
Florida Everglades. After the American Revolution, people living in the southern states didn't really like living that close to a large armed population of former.
That just shows you the constructive language they trying to pull off on you, because the correct grammar or syntax will be these black depicted Seminoles, not blacks and then say Seminoles in one breath and then say blacks in the next breath.
Okay.
That's the confusion right there. They trying to pull you into some political trap. Period.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Slaves, particularly when they were in league with the local Native American nation, the large armed group of free Seminoles.
Again, Native Americans, right? This is that word right there, Native American. That's United States legislation.
Okay.
That's not the determination. That's not the determination of those people she's talking about.
That's not historian. That's legislation.
That's not the self-determination of the people that she's talking about.
Okay.
So she's imposing her ideas on a group of people she don't even really understand, but she's looked at as an expert.
Mm-hmm.
A culture she can never understand.
Mm-hmm.
And they knew that their own slaves felt free to run away and be harbored by this group. They knew that they were welcomed. And so from George Washington's administration on, there was questions of what do we do about the problem of the Florida Everglades.
And in another breath, she called our people slaves again. Like there was the slaves,
Mm-hmm.
the black, the gully,
Mm-hmm.
but really they all the same people.
Mm-hmm.
They just these compartmentalized breakdowns or divides that they're able to process.
They reframe them.
Right.
Yeah.
They were all the same people.
So yeah, they take same person from this frame and put in that frame.
They had to divide them into blacks, gully, slaves.
Yeah, Seminoles.
Yeah, Seminoles. Right.
Administration. General Andrew Jackson actually moved into Florida, invaded it, not authorized to do so. He was actually pursuing justice against those who'd attacked Fort Scott, but he did it anyway. He went into Florida and took the opportunity to execute some of the people who opposed him, and also to clean out some of the areas of former slaves and Seminoles, because he felt that this would make it better for annexation. The United States then soon actually bought Florida from the Spanish. When Jackson...
Bullshit! You hear what the fuck she said, man? Do you hear? Oh my God. See, the thing about it is, this is the play on words that fucks us up, right? Because she said Spain sold Florida.
She said what again?
She said Spain sold Florida.
Okay, yeah.
That's some more of that wordplay bullshit. Okay, so
yeah.
Wait, we got to break that down, right? We got to really process that. Spain sold Florida. Okay, now Spain owned the political jurisdiction, or the political jurisdiction referred to as Florida.
Okay.
So when he said they sold Florida, they sold them the deed, the paperwork to that the grant to the motherfucking the grant to the motherfucking land grant. The land grant.
It's like a lease. Or not a lease, but
okay, so let me break it down like this. Spain, Britain, France, France, Dutch. What was
the British, the UK.
Those are the main ones.
English.
No, it was no UK. There was no UK.
Okay. No UK. Okay.
When I'm talking about the I think it's UK.
All right.
So the main ones: Spain, France, and the British Crown. Right. They all are in treaties with the Moorish Empire,
and also probably the Portuguese.
All in treaties with the Moorish Empire.
Right. Okay.
Listen. What I'm gonna do is, because people just think I'm garbage. I got all the evidence. Because it's all about organizing. It's a lot of work to organize all the evidence. I got all the shit that I'm talking about. I just gotta organize this shit, right?
Yeah, it takes time and work.
Huh?
Takes time and work.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna do it. because I'm doing other stuff, but I definitely got to do this because I'm tired of people not having the proper perspective of the history. We're looking at everything is what the European have given us in this goddamn indoctrination school system, bro. Everything. I'm arguing with people, and I'm like, damn, you are totally under their indoctrination.
Yeah, and spell. Yeah, we don't know how, because they don't know how to function outside of the indoctrination. It's foreign. That's, even though that's the direction we need to go, but to some people that's scary.
Right. But, but my point is Spain, France. Now, you notice that these are the main monarchs, are the main countries that are negotiating the deals that have to do with the so-called purchasing of these areas, right?
Yeah.
Spain, France, and Britain, right?
And probably Portugal too.
Portugal, yes. I see. I didn't think about them. You're right. Portugal.
Yeah. I mean, if you're gonna throw Spain in there, you got to throw Portugal in there.
We have to understand the social political climate, the international social political climate of the time, right? All of those countries that you just mentioned, Spain, Portugal, France, and Britain, they were all in treaties with the Moorish Empire. All of them had treaties with the Moorish Empire.
Okay.
Why? Because everywhere that they said they were colonizing, the original authority laid with who? The Moorish Empire. I can prove everything I just said. I'm talking about through the treaty. Look at the treaties. The treaty between.
So in other words, the
treaty between the British Empire and the Moorish. I mean the British and the Moorish Empire. Then you got the treaty. You got to look at the what's that treaty called? The Treaty of Paris, right? This is where all those. This is where the justification or the legal precedents of all those land grants come from. The damn Treaty of Paris.
Okay, so the Morocco was like, they're really like the Italy or of Africa. I mean, okay, they're really like the Godfather, and all those other European countries were subjects that were under them or had to get permission to go.
Exactly. Exactly. It was an empire. That's what people missing. I'm saying the Moorish Empire.
Okay, so
right
now,
so
how
you talking about a homogeny? A homogeny. Look up the word homogeny. You talking about a global empire that had so much influence that other countries had to come to them in order to get permission to certain things on the global power scheme. They put it like this. Go study the Moroccan crisis 1 and 2, right? The Moroccan, I'll break it down to the basics, right? The Moroccan crisis was nothing more than a conflict of power struggle that was going on in Europe. Now, you ask yourself, right? What the fuck do a power struggle in Europe between Spain? I mean, because Spain, people don't know that secretly, Spain and France had an alliance back in those days, right? And Spain and France were the most favored nation in those treaties with the Moorish Empire, right? So Spain and France, they had this humongous power and influence in Europe because of that connection or those ties with those treaties, right? So the Moroccan crisis was based in the
I didn't say nothing.
Okay, the Moroccan crisis was based in the fact that that power that was held by France, it was so powerful that the rest of the European countries wanted to, they were threatening to go to war to make to for France to relinquish that power.
Who
Right?
they want to go? They want to go to war with France or with who?
Yes, they were going to go to war. France and Britain was going to go to war at the
Hmm.
time because the power, France power had gotten so strong that the other European countries were trying to. Germany had got involved too, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
Because
Okay.
Germany, and oh my God, you got to go study the market crisis 1 and 2 because it's so interesting to learn that what do Morocco have to do with these European countries first of all, and
Yeah.
that power expanded to where there was a conflict in Egypt that was
Mm.
connected to the Moroccan crisis, bro.
Now these guys,
Right? So
Morocco came up.
just just studying the Moroccan crisis, you can see the extent of the power of Morocco as an empire. Still to this day, was still present at the time that the Moroccan Empire was falling.
Uh huh. Now they were
It's
up there
crazy.
with the Vatican. They were up there with the Vatican at one time or beyond.
Who was up there with the Vatican? Who?
The Morocco. I mean, it
Well,
with
you have to. Well, you have to consider that what we're looking at, literally, when you're looking at the Vatican, when you're looking at what's of the Vatican, and you're looking at the Catholic Church and all that stuff,
Mm-hmm.
you're really looking at something that was originally a byproduct of Africa too.
Mm.
The original popes were
They were
African.
black. Yeah, they were black.
You understand me?
Yeah.
So what we're looking at is when it's crazy when you study this stuff because really what we're really looking at is two factors of ourselves that basically divided, right? And
Mm-hmm.
now you have the divide is where you fight where you see these holy wars between Islam and Christianity,
Yeah.
right? Because
So,
they both originated with us.
yeah. Huh.
They both originated with us, but
Yeah.
somehow they got corrupted and became what we see today. And then you can, because what I'm saying is in the holy wars that were fought in the Islamic wars and the Christian, you can see a lot of that history and a lot of what happened in that portion of history and the divide. Like there was a divide. You know what I'm saying? Between
Hey, do
us
me a
and
favor. Let's get this white guy off this. Let's fast forward. Get him off there.
right. But I wanted
Yeah.
to, I wanted to say that because people don't know the dynamics of how the European was able to even come over here on the land, use words like purchase. You see how using words like purchase, and they're not
Like
saying that
they.
like the land literally belongs to them. They're talking
Yeah.
about the grants. They're just talking about the grants. The grants didn't grant them the power to claim the land. So this is what I'm trying to tell people.
Okay. Well, something.
They
Well.
claiming though they're talking about the charters, because the charters are when you study the charters are what evolved into what the states became.
Oh, okay.
You know what I'm saying? Off those charters because they're using that authority, I mean that privilege that was granted to them to establish what we're calling to the United States of America to this day. Go study, go study, go study The Treaty of Paris is the one.
Excuse me.
Is the authorizing document that gave the United States of America the authority to operate on the land over here. That was the when you asked what was the document that gave the United States its authority.
This
Treaty
of Paris.
Treaty of fucking Paris, bro.
I'm gonna check that out. The Treaty of Paris.
To make sure that the Black Seminole communities were moved out by force. So he pursued this in his policy, his larger policy. This led to the Second Seminole War, which was 1835.
No, what happened was they divided us against each other because we was too powerful down south. So they couldn't have just came in there and then this whole bullshit glory. Oh, they came in there and just cleaned us out and shit. No,
they had to do some manipulation.
They had to come in and manipulate us. They had to come in and have infiltrators amongst us. This is what's happening today. The wars between the gully people, because this is what we're looking at today. The gang wars that's going on in Florida and all down south. Those are the same gully people, their ancestors. Now they fighting each other now.
Yeah.
Became the largest and costliest of the so-called Indian wars. Because the two communities were tied together, that is, the former slaves and the Seminoles, when the Seminoles were attacked in the Seminole War, this led to an uprising of the former slaves. In April of 1836, Black Seminoles and their Indian allies moved together to create what was the largest slave rebellion in U.S. history. This wasn't just a matter of runaway slaves. More than 385 plantation slaves ran away from their masters and joined the Black Seminoles, essentially in laying waste to for some of the most valuable areas, plantations in the whole continent.
They didn't need any assistance. They had their own farming, their own land, and they were very successful.
Like I said, this is evidence. The Gully War was evidence that we were the indigenous people here already. And
we knew the land.
We looked at it as an invasion, not the fact that we were just fighting for our freedom from their slave plantations. No. We looked at it as an invasion, like these pale skins over here, you know what I'm saying, taking over, trying to take over our land. That's what it really was.
Soon to be president, Andrew Jackson, who was general at the time, sent the troops into Suwanee, and they got annihilated. So they went into battle. They got their ass tore off, and as they retreated, since they were forced to retreat because they couldn't handle it, General Andrew Jackson spotted a section in the community where the women and children were hiding. Since all the men were fighting in the war, they hid all the women and children.
See? You see? They would do little crafty shit like that. That's how they got in. They never just wanted to, like if it was a fair one-on-one fight, it was like we were fair, it was a fair, nigga, let's fight and whoever wins, they would never win like that, homie. They had to do crafty bullshit like that.
Yeah.
That's how they had to that's how they win any war. They had to do crafty bullshit. If it was about one might over another or against another might, they lose.
Oh, they lose.
Day. So they gotta resort to craftiness. They have to resort to bullshit.
Yeah. Cunning shit. Some low down shit.
This punk bitch motherfucker spotted them and slaughtered each and every one of them.
That's what they would do. They can never win us in a head-on-head, homie. They can never win. They knew it. They know this shit. So they gotta do punk ass shit.
Yeah.
They couldn't handle the men, so they slaughtered women and children. And then they continued their retreat.
Bitch ass motherfucker.
But you see outrage today over these statues that we're trying to take down.
See, this is why they don't want to share this shit.
Yeah. Hey, you can't share this shit.
No idea. Don't give them no idea.
Yeah. He don't want you to share this.
As a hero. Andrew Jackson is on the $20 bill. All through school's curriculum, we were taught how people like Andrew Jackson were heroes. Fuck Andrew Jackson.
Yeah.
He may rest in piss.
Now, the act of slaves was not stopped due to the kindness of their hearts. The United States stopped importing slaves because of the Gullah Army. That army kept growing and growing. Now, as I stated before, the people who were born into slavery, they had a different mindset. Now, people that they were bringing over thought totally different. So you got these people that you're bringing over. They don't think that they're slaves. Now, some of the people that were born into slavery, they fought and they wanted to get out. But a lot of people they were bringing over, they were riders, and they weren't having that shit. And
no, stop it. Don't just say the people they were bringing over was riders, homie. No.
Mm-hmm.
Gully people were indigenous to here.
Okay.
The people that we call the Gully, they indigenous here. Their culture and everything is here. Don't give me that crap. Now, don't get me wrong. People think that our experience here is only through the slave trade. Do you know that we've been coming here for hundreds of thousands of years, trading?
Yeah.
Going back and forth?
Yeah. I know that's what them stone heads, the Olmec heads.
Listen. We put it like this, man. Listen. This is the whole fucking history has been twisted. It's all revisionist bullshit, bro. All that shit.
And you know what? And because of that, until America comes clean with our real true history, America is going to suffer because of that.
You're right. They're suffering now. They're suffering
Yep.
now. They're suffering.
And can nothing go right for them? Ain't nothing. I mean, the country is tearing itself apart. And that's because they're not coming clean with us.
What I wanted to say is, don't get me wrong, our African brothers are intertwined with us over here. We've been intertwined with each other for years. So don't get me trying to speak like I'm speaking division or stuff. I'm speaking divisive. No. We was always intertwined. We always been brothers. But when you try to make it appear as if the brothers who came over here that came across the boat and they were the riders, no. The Gully people are the original people of they are autochthonous people of the land, is what I'm trying to get people to realize. Now, when people think because some of our people who came from over there that we're still not the indigenous people. No, we're the indigenous people over here and over there. The frick are you talking about?
this is what led to the Emancipation Proclamation. White towns had so much fear. Everyone was so afraid, and they put so much pressure on Lincoln.
I'm glad he put that in the project. They're trying to make it seem like the Civil War stopped the institutionalized slavery. Hell the fuck no. No, y'all have
no. Yeah, it was no longer profitable. It wasn't profitable anymore. Yeah. It wasn't going down like that.
This is why they did that. They knew that they wasn't going to be able to contain this anymore. They saw how fast it was growing, and this widespread warfare was getting out of control. General Thomas Jessup said that the Negroes are running the war. General Thomas Jessup convinced and insisted that they set these people free. It was time. See, they always want to throw different names around. You got to be careful with these names and read behind the history of this stuff. They want to call these the Seminole Wars or the Indian Wars. Now, on December 8th, 1837.
Right. So the Seminole Wars was actually the Gullah Wars, and they misinterpreted everything about it.
Yeah.
General Jessup left Andrew Jackson, telling him, "You may be assured this is a Negro and not an Indian war. And if it be not speedily put down, the South will feel the effects of it and their slave population before the end of next season." We have never just accepted slavery and laid down. They had rebellions on ships, and we had no guns.
And we took over a couple of
They were
shit.
fighting without guns.
Took over a couple of them
There was
Genghis
over
Khan.
100 rebellions in the 1600s. There was over 100 rebellions in the 1700s. There was over 100 in the 1800s. The Gullah Wars lasted for more than 100 years.
Right.
We've never just laid down and took that.
Hell no.
We've always took back.
Never laid down. I'm thinking in my spirit today, nigga, if that shit was going down, like, no.
I've seen dumbass
Lost your
quotes
damn mind.
of people saying, "We are not our ancestors. We'll whoop y'all ass." So
Whoop y'all ass.
No, he right.
They
I
have
like
never
what he's
accepted that.
saying though.
Never.
He had a couple of inconsistencies in it, but for the
Scared to
most
even
part,
talk
he
back
right
to your
on. He
boss.
probably stop saying that. Don't
So
disrespect our ancestors like that, nigga. They was riders too.
Some of you motherfuckers
Yeah.
never had
They were the
guns,
original riders.
never had guns pointed at your kids and telling you either put these chains on or I'm gonna blow your daughter's head off. So cut the bullshit.
Cut the motherfucking bullshit.
I would highly recommend you go read The Invisible War. Another book, go read Florida's Negro War, Black Seminoles, and the Second Seminole War. And the third one, go check out The Unconquered. These three books will tell you everything you need to know about the Gullah Wars. Everything.
Mm.
I think that was it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like how you said that we have never just laid down and accepted this. And I don't know who the hell told y'all that.
That's not our Black history. This is our Black history. Well, that's part of our history.
Right.
In this era. But our history goes on way before that. We had history way before slavery.
It's to me, it's like the thing why they suppress our history, because it's so basically overwhelming. So much to it. It's so overwhelming. If some people they get inferiority complex in it and just grasping all our history. Mind you, they got all of our artifacts in their museums.
Yeah, and they have our shit, and we need our shit. We need our shit today more than ever, so we can remember who the fuck we really are and where we really came from, so we know what we supposed to do and where we're heading.
Well, the only way
Trying to get there.
that's going to actually really happen is if we mature as a people and have political unity. You know what I'm saying? People talking about
Yeah.
unity, but I'm talking about a specific unity to where now we can assemble ourselves into a permanent population of people and agree to have political unity to whatever government we establish as a
Mm-hmm.
people, or a government for the people, by the people, but ours, because all those concepts came from us and originally too. That's another
Yeah.
thing that they want to discredit us from too, is that they came up with these unique ideas
No,
on
none of that shit is
free
theirs.
national
So
government, creating a free national government. No, they got those, or those originate with us. They will
yeah.
tell you that the Constitution was based and their government was based on the Algonquin Confederation. You know what I'm saying? They will tell you that.
Based on the what confederation?
The Algonquin Confederation.
What's that?
The Algonquin Confederation was a confederation of tribes here. You know what I'm saying? It was the Algonquin Confederation. It was the Hananasi, Confederation. So this is a gang of tribes that just came together over here.
Okay.
The Iroquois Confederation. My bad. The Iroquois. The what's the name? The Iroquois Confederation and the Hananasi Confederation was just a confederation of tribes that they came together to create a national government. The Confederation of Tribes was literally the national government of those people. That was literally their form of the national government.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? So we had government structures prior to us going under the colonization and the Inquisition.
Yeah.
We had government set up already over here.
But
Contrary
was it
to
a government?
Go ahead.
Excuse me. I apologize for cutting you off. Was it a kind of government that ruled over us, or was it a type of government? What type of government was this that we had at the time?
It was nothing more than a council. It was nothing more than a council, right? That would literally handle the affairs of the general confederation of all the different tribes, right? It was just a consolidation and agreement amongst these tribes that if things that affect all of us on a bigger scale comes, then the council would handle those issues.
Okay, right? So was it a type of government that allowed the people?
No, what it was you want to say is who ruled. The people were
governed their own selves.
The people were the ones who gave the authority to the council. The people. So the council didn't rule over the people.
So the people governed their own selves.
Well, it was a form of us governing over ourselves through this form of government, this confederation of tribes.
Okay, all right.
Governing over ourselves.
Okay, so when it came to passing law,
it wasn't like how it was the genuine republic that the European attempted to try to create. The genuine republic, like the free national government. That's what the confederation was. Because all it was established is to handle, like for example, when the pale skins come over here, they would talk to the council, which was a council of other tribes and elders. See, it will be the higher council and the lower council, right?
But who interest would they have though?
Who interest?
Yeah.
It will be all in the interest of the people.
It would be in the interest of the people.
Yes.
Okay.
What I said, when you look at the genuine construction of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, it was based on what we did. So if you can understand the level of of transparency in the government, like the
Mm-hmm.
United States was originally supposed to be, and
Mm-hmm.
the fact that it basically recognized, because the government is not giving rights to people, it
Uh-oh.
recognizes certain rights. The Constitution was a recognition of inalienable rights that everyone had. That's why it was speaking of these inalienable rights of man, and all man was endowed with these unalienable rights and stuff. What are they
Mhm.
speaking? They're speaking concepts and principles that originated with us as a people. It was
Yes.
the original, like for example, they came from monarchs. They were being
Yeah, they
ruled
came
over
from
by,
monarchism.
they
Yeah.
still being ruled over by monarchs, but they
Yeah.
had adopted the way of governing. This was an agreement, but they broken those agreements based on the fact that now they're saying they're a democracy now.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That was a breach of the agreement they had with us, the indigenous people, in order for them to have that safe passage to operate on the land that treaties like the Stockholm Treaty gave them. Right?
Mm-hmm.
We gave them sanction. We gave them amnesty to operate over here.
Yeah.
They had to abide by certain rules.
And now, shit. Okay, so now, how is it possible for them to sell the land off to other countries like China or whoever?
But again, they're not selling the land as uh, the corporeal land, like the physical land. They're not selling. They're selling the the grants, right? So how do you know
Mm-hmm.
this? How do you know this? They saying, and when the European pale skin lady said that Spain sold France, sold Florida. Well,
Mm-hmm.
the land is not Florida. Florida is a political jurisdiction that exists only on paper.
Oh, so it's like an entity,
Yes.
an
So that's
idea.
what they bought. They didn't
It's
buy
an,
the land. They bought the entity.
yeah, it's an idea.
Yes, they bought the entity. They bought the grant that allowed that
Mm-hmm.
entity to exist. Right?
Yeah.
That's all they bought. So that's all they selling. When they say they purchased the Louisiana Purchase, you got
Yeah.
to listen to the language. You know what I'm saying? Now,
So,
if it said they conceded land over to, no, they didn't concede no land. They sold Florida.
yeah, Florida. They didn't
Florida is
sell
not
the
the land.
land. No.
Right. Florida is not the
So
land.
what would the land be called? Or what would be the language?
It was first of all, you can't buy and sell the land. It belongs to the people, the indigenous people. They tell you that. They can't buy and sell no land over here. It belongs to the
Yeah.
indigenous people. They'll tell you this. So, what was your question again?
Um, damn.
You forgot to, huh? Spoken at wee.
Yeah, I know. 3 seconds memory. But okay, so um
You asked
damn.
something about asked something about the land. How do you
Yeah,
can't
yeah, so
first of all
yeah,
you can't,
so mhm.
right? You only purchasing um, the surveyed portion that the United States legislative body, they survey the land, right?
Yeah.
And they divide when they create this map, right? And they say, okay, this is Washington D.C. This is Southern Carolina. This is
Uh-huh.
Northern Carolina. That map that you're looking at,
Yeah.
that's nothing more than their legislation,
Yeah.
right? That's nothing more than their legislation. They surveyed the land and they claiming that in the sense of that's belongs to them because those are franchises. Those are franchises. The states are franchises of the subsidiary, or they're subsidiaries of the original or the main company. They are subsidiaries. They are franchises. This is all they're backing. They're telling you they're just claiming their franchise. They're not claiming the land because they know the land. They will tell you. Look up the it's a case law. It's a case law. I'm watch next show. Next show, I'm gonna have all this. I'm gonna gather this up. I'm gonna have all this information. But okay, what else I'm gonna prove that shit with?
Well, okay. So who owned the resources of the land?
It belongs to the indigenous people of the land. It belongs to the indigenous people of the land. People, what they do is, you see how look. It's just look. Remember, they had this debate on whether they were going to be able to mine the oil that's up north, and the federal government they was fighting all this time to try to get that land up north, right?
Yeah.
Why? Because the battle is a legal battle that has to be fought on certain levels because they have to review all of the land grants that was based in those ancient, well-settled treaties, jurisprudence. You're going to have to go back. This is why they always go to the Supreme Court, because what does the Supreme Court do? They basically make judgments and decisions based on what? Precedents of law. If you understand what precedents of law, they have to go back, look back, and find out what is the dynamics of how things are registering today based on the legal precedents, right?
What's relative? What's still relative? What
treaty
became relative? Yeah.
What treaty still standing? What ancient law? Ancient law is what they're looking back on.
Oh,
ancient
they
law.
go by that. Ancient
Hell
law.
Yeah. The Supreme Court makes judgments and decisions based on ancient law.
God damn.
I will debate anybody on that. Anybody who come in here and tell me that they're making decisions based on modern fucking positive law today,
legislation.
I will debate anybody on that. The Supreme Court only make decisions based on ancient law.
Not modern legislation, huh?
Hell the fuck no.
And ancient law.
Yeah.
That's true. But they don't really share none of that shit with us.
Of course not.
They keep that shit commercial with us. Well, we're commercial citizens.
I mean, once you do not rebut the presumption of law, right? Because they have a presumption that you're a United States citizen. They have a presumption that you're in their jurisdiction. They can presume that they have the right to adjudicate upon you. Those are all presumptions. What do you do to a presumption? You clean it up. No. You clean it up. You correct the presumptions.
You correct it.
Presumption of law. Look up, because this is how they're using color of law and presumption of law to govern all of what they're doing, because everything they're doing is illegal and unlawful otherwise.
Pretty much, based on what you've been saying. Everything. I mean, this whole damn this whole system is a scam based on that.
It's been a scam from day one. The British Crown never had the intention of this evolving into a society. It was always the intention to come over here to enslave the indigenous people and to exploit their land. That was always the plan. And,
but niggas said, fuck y'all.
Trying to make it appear as if they've evolved from that and they're still not on that same mission. Fuck out of here. Y'all still on the same mission.
That's why you're getting fucked up and rocked right now. Ain't shit going right. Ain't shit gonna go right.
Ain't nothing gonna ever go right long as they doing this to they mothers and fathers.
Yep.
They're not honoring their mothers and fathers.
No, they're not honoring their parents. They're fucking spitting in their face, treating us well. We got to act like parents again. Like you said, we have to begin acting like parents.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That still don't give them the right to dishonor us, though.
No, they don't. No.
At the end of the day, my bad. They're really not dishonoring us because we haven't claimed who we actually are. So, by default, because we're not making the claim, they're not actually dishonoring us. Because actually, when you study what the shrine is, I mean the Rosicrucians, the Shriners,
Mm-hmm.
they're honoring us right there. That's an honor to us.
Mm-hmm.
What the freak do they have to do? Anything that they have to do with the shrine and Arabic order of noble mystics? What they have to do with that shit? That's all
Nothing. That's
That's
all
all
art.
our shit. So what they're doing is they're holding on to it until we wake up and realize, oh no, give them back our shit.
Yeah.
Man.
This works for us. Yeah.
Right.
And yeah. Well, then there has to be an intelligentsia, an educational system that has to be implemented already, which has already been implemented. But this shit has to.
What you talking about amongst us?
Yes, amongst us.
There is one. Everyone go on the Academy of Providence, academyofprovidence.org. This is a whole website. It's an actual school, but it's an online school that's dedicated to what you're speaking of. Right? This is how I'm learning more about these ancient ties through treaties and how the power dynamics actually works.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? The power dynamics is, you will be surprised how it actually works once you're studying at this level, bro. That's why I'm saying academyofprovidence.org.
Academyofprovidence.org.
They got classes there, man. I took most of their classes. The main one you want to take if you really want to understand the dynamics of the power dynamics of over here is the one that's called International Public Administration Law. International Public Administration. But that's a $300 class. But it's worth it. It's worth it. And also take the contract law class. Right? Because the contract law class tells you how to protect yourself and pertaining to contracts and how to contract and how to basically protect yourself contractually.
Yeah.
It's an interesting class too.
Yeah. So that way you don't step in some doo-doo.
Right, because contract is the way that they're enslaving people now. They're enslaving you through contractual relationships,
which are spells.
Right, and they get if they're the sigil, if they writing the sigil, then they're controlling the dynamics of the power from which the spell is being conducted or being manifested. Cast, yeah, that's the right word, cast. You know what I'm saying? So all right. This is where the idea of them being the authority comes from, because they are the authority.
Well, they planting that in our mind. They're making us believe that.
Yeah, they are the authority over their instruments. My bad.
Yeah, over their instruments. Yeah. Well, we have the you want to do the Pablo video? The light and darkness.
The dark divine darkness.
No. Well, we can finish that one. We can finish that one, or we can go to the next one. Which one you want to do? You want to finish the divine darkness? Because you got two. They're both good.
Yeah, we'll finish that one. Cause I don't got the,
We'll finish the first.
dark and I don't got the dark and light one.
I sent it to you. I sent it to you today.
Send it again.
Send it again. All right.
Yeah, because I didn't get.
Okay. 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 You should be getting it. It's that one. Wait, let me see. No, light and darkness as cosmic realities. Yeah, I'm sending you light and darkness as cosmic realities. But we just never finished the other one.
This is Monday.com CRM. CRM actually want to use, capture and collect all.
So
I
we
really
start
I
from
really
what
need
the
to get
senses can bring.
YouTube Prime, so
But we
don't play
can
no
go.
videos.
We want to go
I
beyond
mean, no commercials.
Yeah.
the perception of the senses. So how do we proceed? He says, abstracting all attributes. This is the via negativa in the true sense, in the original sense, the mystical sense. Via negativa is the idea of letting go any attribute that is limited. For example, is God this? If God is this, it's not the opposite. Therefore, we cannot postulate that God is everywhere. Most mystics regard God or the divine as being omnipresent. So any qualification is limited. So the mystic begins to work the
Oh, the bug.
limitations, all qualities, all temporary aspects. And he says, so abstract, get rid of all attributes in order that without veil we may know that unknowing which is enshrouded under all that is known and all that can be known, and that we may begin to contemplate the super essential, that which is even beyond essences, the super essential darkness, which is hidden by all the light that is in existing things. So you see,
You know that takes that concept of those who know they don't know to another level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You there? You hear me?
I'm here. Yeah, I'm hearing you. Yes. You hear me? You hear me? Um, okay.
Wow.
Yeah, what happened? You boned out.
I was on there for a minute. I don't know what happened.
I don't either. I'm
I
shit.
seen you for a minute right there, but
Yeah, I'm just looking at myself now. I don't know what happened to you.
I'm trying to get back in.
Yeah, maybe your internet probably The signal probably got weak for a second. Oh, fucking bugs. We must be killing them today. I mean, we keep putting out videos like this. Zuckerberg gonna show up at our front door.
You better not.
I know. The true Zuckerberg, he'd be a fucking robot or something.
Oh, you still on?
Yeah, I'm still on.
Oh, we got louder now. So I guess okay, we on the phone.
Yeah. Oh, you're back. Oh, okay. Yeah, due to technical difficulties.
Yeah, you know how it goes.
See, he says, the light is hiding the darkness. Existence is hiding the essence. Even the attributes of God are hiding the super essential God. In the Cloud of Unknowing, another mystical text that we are going to see a couple of quotes, he says, a Christian monk says, it is okay to praise God and His love and His mercy and to have all these attitudes. But what I'm teaching is something that goes beyond. Don't tell this to anybody else. Keep it secret. It was quite dangerous. But also because it can be misinterpreted. A lot of the problems we see in modern spirituality with abuse of power, with things that were talked in the talk last night, are because I think people who are not yet mature are coming to teachings that are not meant for that level of maturity. Today we want everything to be available. Why do you keep this secret? I want to have access to it. But there are certain approaches that we need the maturity necessary to take them in the right way. So we have.
That's what the mystery schools would do. They would orientate you into the secret lessons and what we'll refer to the mystical lessons. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't just they just gave it. That's what he's talking about in this society. You can access all of these sacred mystical lessons
without the initiation.
But people are not mature enough to handle it.
Yeah, you gotta go through the initiation. And the initiation is your life as you apply this shit to your life and what you go through as you apply it. That's your initiation.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the initiation is something that you basically are driven from something within that brings you to the right places and to the right teachers, and that's where your initiation really starts within.
Mm-hmm.
Immature pseudo gurus teaching immature audiences, and then we have all these kind of troubles. So these things were kept secret and given to those who had gone first through the traditional approach to religion. That is very important.
No, but when it became secretive, that's when the corruption came in, where they were trying to manipulate people with these secrets. Man, because there was a culture of when people wanted to get initiated into it, that they can. It's like in the Moorish Science Temple right now. It's like you got to go through all of this being selected by a chosen. You know what I'm saying? Like basically, you got to be chosen. You got to be somebody got to show favor to you to make you enter into the ADAP chamber. Somebody got to show favor to you, or somebody got to see something in you to say, okay, I want to make him a candidate for the ADAP chamber. right? So
Yeah.
it wasn't originally based in that back then. It was it was something that they saw in a person, and they'd be like, it wasn't based on their bias. It was like, okay, I see he's an initiative. I see you could see it. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? These are the candidates. They will be naturally, organically picked, not just some random, selection of somebody who trying to be arbitrarily picked based on his ego.
Mm-hmm.
That is necessary. The problem with religion is when they say this stage is the only one that helps, that is true, and all the rest is a lie. But if religion is not exclusive, we can see how all conceptions of God are necessary. And if we can give the freedom to people to choose the highest conception that they are able to hold, religion will always help people. If we put an ideal that is too far from the grasp of people, that ideal is not going to inspire people to be better, to do the right thing, to love each other. We need to give people the ideal that is attainable to them. But then there are many that need something else. So these monks normally would teach this to those people that they saw had the maturity for
Right.
this.
That's what I just said. They will see people and okay, I see that they can be introduced to this. They can be orientated.
So the idea here is that light attributes hide the darkness and the essences. And I think this is partly why Blavatsky says light is matter and darkness pure spirit. Now, this was said at the end of
Light is matter.
Boom! Light is matter and darkness is pure spirit.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah. Light.
That's a dope ass T-shirt.
Yeah. Subatomic particles matter.
Dang.
of the 19th century, when we didn't know anything about quantum physics, and scientists thought that light was pure energy as something completely different from matter. Today we know that light is matter, the photons and all the subatomic particles. So even from a physical point of view, this is true. But again, we are in love with light, which is the perceptible, and we tend to refuse the dark, which is beyond the perceptible.
Yeah, the darkness is what we don't know, so we're afraid of it.
Yeah, it's beyond our senses.
That's the only right. So we're afraid of it. We're taught to approach it with fear
because we function within our senses.
Right.
Yeah, now it's time for us.
Go ahead.
Now it's time for us to go beyond our senses. And then that's where you'll find the unknowable when it's ready to deal with you.
we so orientated and fixated on our seven senses that we don't understand that there's a perception beyond that perception.
Yeah. I think we kind of know, but I think we knew when we were younger, but we forget as we get older.
Yeah. I also was I've been watching the Agents of Shield series and shit. That's another Marvel comic series and everything. And they were talking about this artifact that they had, and they said he was talking about they was arguing over we shouldn't introduce this to the general public. It's dangerous, right?
Mm-hmm.
She said just because it's powerful don't mean it's dangerous. And that's what we have deemed anything that's out of the control of humans dangerous.
Yeah.
And that's where that logic comes from.
And in the mystical quest, we have to start falling in love with darkness, not in the sense of evil, of course, but that which is beyond, with silence.
First of all, the sense of darkness that was connotatively given evil That's
Mm-hmm.
constructive language. That was to lead people away from what he's speaking of now. They had to demonize darkness.
Yeah, but he's going to put evil in its proper perspectives on the next one that we listen to, where evil becomes something that is very, very necessary in
Of course,
duality.
of course, it is
Yeah.
necessary. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
the whole dynamics, the whole dynamics of God and the devil, right, is opposing forces. Is duality is your higher and lower self. If you didn't have this stuff, right, in the Circle Seven or the doctrine of the Moorish Science Temple, it says without your lower self, you will never have a foe. You will never know a foe. So you
Mm-hmm.
can never grow. You
Mm-hmm.
can never go to the next level if you didn't have your antagonizing lower self.
Yeah. Yeah, devil.
Your devil, your double.
As opposed to, excitement, constant stimuli. So Pseudo Dionysius said, when plunging into the darkness, which is above the intellect, we pass not merely into brevity of speech, into words, but even into absolute silence of thoughts as well as of words. So the direction is going into that direction of silence, not only of the tongue, but also silence of thoughts. So the Cloud of Unknowing, that was written by a Christian monk influenced by Pseudo Dionysius, we don't know who he was. He writes to a student and he says, the first time you do this, you will experience a darkness, as it were a cloud of unknowing. You will know nothing except the feeling of a naked intent reaching out towards God. So you leave behind everything you know. He says, put it in the cloud of forgetting. Forget about God, everything you learn, the attributes. Forget about your spiritual life, how you are. Forget about everything, and just stay in this silence, in this state of not knowing, only with the yearning to reach God, to reach the divine. And he says, when I say darkness, I mean a lack of knowing. As with those things that are unknown to you, we have to start with the idea that we don't know the divine. Instead of projecting our image onto the divine, let us start with the idea we don't know the divine.
Well, really, what you do is you go from a perspective of searching for God, and now you realize that you are the entity
Mm-hmm.
that's what you go from. That's what they're talking about. It's like that darkness is above intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
So you're operating in this hyperdimensional state that I was talking about. How for humans, you know what I'm saying, continental shifts happen over millions of years. For
Mm-hmm.
gods, that shit happened whenever we want it to fucking
Yeah.
happen. You know what I'm saying? You feel
Yeah.
me?
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Have to find it, not find it according to my beliefs. Again, beliefs are perfectly fine, but in the mystical search, we leave them, we suspend them. In phenomenology, sometimes they say bracket them out. For the time being, suspend all your beliefs, all your knowledge. Don't think that what you are going to find is something that you will recognize, because then you are only working with your own projections.
Ooh, because that's what you're going to create. Whatever you're projecting from what you think you know,
Yeah.
is what you're going to manifest.
Mm-hmm.
So you going into this darkness, right? You reboot the system.
You
You reboot
reboot
the
the
whole
system.
system. You shutting it all fucking down, and now you can create. You're just basically You are the infinite possibilities, potentialities that can ever be. You become that now. So
Yeah.
you are perfectly in a position to to make to manifest anything possible as you possibly can. Source using the sources from the divine source.
Yeah. From the all,
You can
the
pull
absolute all.
directly from the divine source. You can pull
You pull.
directly from the divine source now.
Yep. Oh, you hit the hammer on the nail on that one.
Leave all behind. He says, what obscures God from you is not a cloud in the sky, but this cloud of unknowing. Abide in this darkness as long as you can. Any insight you ever gain of God will be in this cloud and in this darkness. So the instruction is abide in the darkness. As Adonai that has chosen to dwell in thick darkness, that is where we can find the divine. So we have to train ourselves to learn how to abide in the darkness.
Stop it for a second.
And for this, there are.
You hear that name he mentioned, Adonai? He just said this name, Adonai. Okay, that was the name that I was trying to remember one night, and I was talking to you because that's the name of God manifested on Malkut, which is a feminine name, Adonai.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Oh yeah,
so,
the divine spark created art is masculine and feminine, but it's mostly masculine. I mean, it's mostly feminine.
well, yeah, but see, Malkut, the earth, is a feminine principle. So God name on Malkut would be a feminine name.
In theosophical literature about abiding in the darkness and how we can do this. So in her language that is many times obscure and metaphorical, Blavatsky says the student should fix the fourfold consciousness. By that she means thoughts, emotions, the sense of vitality and the physical sensations. Fix your personal consciousness on a higher plane and nail it there. Let the student make a bundle of all these different activities of consciousness and pin them to a higher state. He should center on this higher, trying not to permit the body and intellect to draw him down and carry him away. So in meditation, the idea is try to reach the highest state and stay there. Memories will come.
Going back to what we was talking about, how thoughts weigh you down.
Mm-hmm.
All of your regret, all of what you holding on to, this three-dimensional matter quality.
Matter.
And you bringing yourself vibrationally down into matter by holding on to those things.
Yeah, you become less dense.
Come, sense, craving for your attention. Just notice them.
Well, when you're holding on to them, you become more dense.
No, dense
right?
isn't
holding
dense.
On to this.
No.
Dense
The higher density you go, the higher density you go, the lower, the lighter you become. The lower density, you become more matter. Okay, we're on the lowest density.
Density is density. I thought, because from my perspective of the sciences, density.
No, we want to go to a higher density. A higher density of matter is a lighter matter, a lighter state of matter.
No. I get what you're saying, but from my research or my understanding of it, density is weight. When things be matter becomes more dense, it becomes more heavier.
I thought it was the less dense it becomes, the more heavier.
Let's look it up. Density.
Okay.
I'm already doing.
Is higher density Lighter or
According to Socratic, if a
But
substance has a
you may
higher
be
density,
right though. You may be right. No,
likewise, a
you
lighter
may be right
density
though.
means it is much lighter.
You may be
For
right.
example, air has a density of approximately 1.225 kgm.
okay. All right. Thank you. But I kind of get what you're saying.
So
But
density is when they get light.
yeah. So it becomes less dense. The more matter, the more you fall into matter, the less dense you become.
Right. And we're really just really talking about the vibratory rate that the substance is vibrating at. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
Especially if it's a original spark. If it's original spark, then it vibrates at a level. You hear me?
Yeah, there's always going to be matter, but there's higher levels of matter. Okay, there's always going to be matter, but
Right.
there's going to be denser matter.
But my point is matter is nothing more than a vibrational level of the same substance that basically is light. Right?
Yeah,
Same substance.
yeah.
It's just a lighter.
Matter is light. It's condensed light.
Yeah, it's just a denser. It's just a denser version of it, or not a denser, but
or condensed version.
Like I said, I thought
that was the word you used. Yeah, condense.
Yeah, but yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The point is, it's all based in the vibratory rate of the element or the substance or whatever matter that you're dealing with. It depends on what vibratory rate is vibrating at, because these the matter basically is shifting from a wave to a solid solidification is based on the consciousness of perception of humanity. This is what they mean by mind over matter.
Okay, I apologize for that.
You can go and focus again in the darkness and the silence, as when you are trying to listen to something that is very subtle. If I say right now, there is a bird singing right now, can you hear it? So what is your attitude to you? That is more or less the attitude. Stop and pay attention, waiting for something to come. Now, Annie Besant recommended, she said that it's far easier to do this after you work with your intellect. So she says, in meditation, practice any technique of meditation you want. You may think of the divine, visualize the divine, pay attention to sensations or to anything. And gradually, the mind that is constantly going all over the place steady by this process in meditation of slow and gradual curving, and at last you are fixed on the central thought or the central figure or the object of meditation, and there you are poised. When you are in that state, let it go. Now let even that go. Drop the central thought, the idea, the seed of meditation. Let everything go, but keep the mind in the position gained, the highest point reached, vigorous and alert, not a mind that is dreamy, that is a dull mind. The mind that is alert, waiting for what may come. Remain poised and wait in the silence and the void. You are in the cloud that is described in the Christian mysticism. Another quote by her, then when you have worked up to your highest point of reasoning in meditation.
Oh my.
book by D.H. Lawrence
My bad.
called Apocalypse. D.H. Lawrence.
I messed up.
And reached the last link of your chain.
And I was about to say, guess what they call this new data storing hub that they call this data storing hub that's on the internet now. It's called the cloud.
Called the what? The cloud. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Of argument. This is using the technique of insight meditation, trying to realize a spiritual truth. Once you use your mind to its best ability, and your mind will carry you no further, and beyond that you can see nothing, then stop. At the highest point of thinking, cling desperately to the last link of the chain, and there keep the mind poised, in steadiness and strenuous quiet, waiting for what may come. After a while, you will be able to maintain this attitude for a considerable time. When you try it at first, you may be in that silence for 1 second, 2 seconds. But if we train ourselves in this, if we don't end our meditation with the technique, we end the meditation with transcending the technique. Little by little, we learn to stay in the formless world. She says there is no objection to any of you who are accustomed to meditation in trying this. This is not something dangerous, provided that you can remember to stop the moment you feel a little bit tired. If you are really doing it, you feel tired in a moment. Then there is a temptation to go on further. But don't try to do it too vigorously for the first time, because it tends to bring about a headache. It is better not to persist against that. A headache means that you are straining the nervous mechanism of the brain, which you must not do. And you will see that it's not easy to hold this consciousness there. And if you are trained in meditation, you can push it. And then you start feeling like a pressure first in the brain, like a little pressure, and then it may develop into a headache. So Besant says the body has its own rhythm. It has a certain inertia. You cannot push too far. It's just like a crooked tree. If you try to unbend it too fast, you will break it. So you have to be patient. And she says, as long as you are careful, this is perfectly fine. This is not the empty mind where the person just sits, opens up the mind for whatever to come, falling into a state of unconsciousness. This is transcending cognition, being in this very alert mind. In Buddhism, they talk about the clarity of mind, keeping the clarity of mind, keeping full consciousness, as we are going to see. And she says, the term cloud is very often used in mystical literature of the West. You feel as though surrounded by a dense mist. Be still, be patient, wait. Let your consciousness be in the attitude of suspense, when you are suspending judgment, suspending activity. Presently, the cloud will thin, and first in glimpses, then in its full beauty, the vision of a higher plane will dawn on your entranced sight. In that darkness, a light shall be seen, the glory of the self. The cloud shall vanish, and the shining of the self shall be made manifest. So the idea in the mystical approach is dwell in the darkness, and at some point, the divine will be revealed. You see, in many movies, there is this idea that the aspirant goes to a temple, knocks at the door, nobody opens, and either he gives up and leaves, or he sits there for 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, until the door is open. And that was the test. How much do you want to come into the temple? So this darkness and silence can be seen as the test. How much do you want the divine? Can you stay here? Or you say, oh, this is too boring, I'll go back to impressions, stimulation.
Woo!
But it's also in the darkness that we are in the presence of the divine. You can think of the darkness and silence as being kneeling in front of the divine. Remember, God dwells in the silence, in the darkness, and it will reveal itself to you when the divine decides to do it. And she says, and Ibesan says, the passing to a higher condition of consciousness is always preceded by what seems like an extinction of consciousness. That is, we lose what we have. We lose all the distinctions and the differences and the limitations which are our consciousness. These go, and we are obliged to have the courage to let the whole of those go. I have heard many times people saying that at some point in meditation they felt that they were disappearing and they become afraid and they felt that they needed to ground themselves. And all that is a reaction from the personal self that is being dissolved, and there is the fear from the personal self. And if we don't know that that is so, welcome everybody. Thank you for being here. It is a joy for me to be back here. My wife and I lived and worked here for many years, and now we are living and working in another Theosophical Center in Crotona. So it is very nice to be here, and I feel privileged also to be able to share with you some ideas about this very interesting topic that we have for the summer convention. So we will start examining this idea of light and darkness, good and evil, as cosmic realities, as something that has to do with the structure of the cosmos, not so much as it affects each of us. We will see this a little more towards the end. But normally in the theosophical view, there is this approach to start looking at things in a general way, not in a particular way. And from the general view, we try to understand from that perspective the particulars. Science, for example, tends to do the opposite. It looks at the particulars and tries to draw the law that is bringing together that group of phenomena, for example. But in the theosophical approach, we try to do the opposite, because then it gives you a specific perspective that I and many others have found, enlightening in many ways.
Right. Basically, instead of trying to dissect it, try to grasp it in its totality.
Yeah.
So now you can appreciate it from that perspective, and now you get to relate. You get a what's called a rapport with the functions and the sense of it, and now you can go into understanding it fractionally, like break it down now.
Instead of dissecting
So
it.
let us start with talking about the problem that arises when we regard the divine as light. Because normally we have this sense that darkness, evil, suffering, metaphorically we call that darkness, that it is not right, that somehow it is out of place. And if we postulate that the divine is light, then that makes it evident that darkness cannot be in the light. And actually we find this, for example, in the Christian tradition. We find this, John writes, "This is the message we have heard from him and declare to you. God is light. In him there is no darkness at all." This is an important concept in a particular context of reference. But in another context, this presents a problem. Here, he's saying darkness, there is no darkness
he said in
God.
a particular context.
This presents a problem. You
Right.
break it down.
It's what. So he's really talking about. What he's really talking about is.
So now we have to.
How you have been orientated. How you've been orientated and led to believe things work.
Yeah.
Right? In opposed to how we should really raise the children and allow them to explore things how they see it from their perspective now, and stop making it appear like we have to like like keep them innocent, or we gotta try to uh, put them in a box of human beings, and we should let them explore things as they develop naturally. Like it should be natural. It shouldn't be something that we just hinder with rules that we put on. Don't do this. Don't do that. Don't do that. Now, of course, I agree with rules that will harm them, things that will harm them. Of course, we want to have them avoid, but mostly we want to actually get them to realize,
be aware,
limitations of themselves and where they're going. We want to get them in a sense of an observer of what's going on around them, in opposed to just being a victim of what's going on around them. And this will get them to realizing the different perspectives that they can take on, the different attitudes they can look at this thing from. You know what I'm saying? And we lock them into just looking at it from this fearful, you know what I'm saying? Everything is
obey God.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's all based on a fear perspective. It's all based on a inferiority complex.
The fear of God is the beginning of wisdom.
That's the most retarded stuff I ever heard. The fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. And you better not try to pull that bullshit off on me. I'll be like, yeah.
There is darkness in the world, in human nature. We now have to explain, where is this coming from? And then the second question is, why is it there? You know, in the Christian view of God, earlier gods normally were good and evil. They would get angry like human beings. They would be vengeful, and they would be loving. So in more ancient traditions, there wasn't a lot of troubles explaining where evil comes from. Even in the Old Testament, there are passages where it is said that both good and evil come from God. In the Christian tradition, there is an emphasis on God as the source and a source of all power, a source of omniscient, which again is good in a specific context. It is talking about the divine nature in its positive aspect, but the problem is that it leaves out all these other aspects of the world that is difficult to explain. So some Christians, early Christians like the Gnostics, they said, well, the problem is that there is a God, a lower God, which is the one that created the world and the universe, which is not the highest God. And this
lower God
is flawed. And this is why there is suffering in the world. They have a whole mythology to explain the reason why there is imperfection and suffering in the world. Well, it was created by a lower God, not the God that is light. But the problem of why is there suffering has been for 2,000 years with us, especially in the West, and we have not been able to solve it. I think the theosophical view gives us some clues to look at good and evil, light and darkness, in a way in which both can be integrated, both can be understood as part of an overall process that is going in the right direction. Without one of the two, this process would not be possible. So the first thing that we have to reframe is this idea that God is personal, personal in the sense of an entity separated from creation that is all good. Mystics in the Christian tradition, for example, or a good number of them, they tend to see God in a different way. So they had to use a different word, like the Godhead, which is more or less like the idea of saying the Godhood, a more abstract aspect of God from which the personal God comes. because they begin to sense that God is everywhere in creation. And as we are going to see, especially in my second talk on Monday, there is an aspect of God, of the Godhood, that is not contained in the regular idea of a personal, all-good God, in which there is no room for evil. So in the theosophical view, there is a postulate that the ultimate reality is an impersonal, absolute principle that is beyond good and evil. It is the ground within which everything that exists,
Impersonal, absolute
that can exist,
reality.
that will exist, is present as a seed. So it's more like a space within which the universe appears. And this is closer, as I was saying, with the mystic,
because
mystical
it
idea
needed
in
both of these.
Christianity of the God.
The universe to manifest itself, it needed both aspects of reality, which is the darkness and the light.
Yeah, he gonna
What is perceived as good and evil.
destructive and constructive.
Right.
Can't have one. Can't have one without the other.
Then there is the problem of the idea of sudden creation. If creation came ex nihilo, which is the phrase they use in theology, out of nothing, if it is possible to create out of nothing something, then if you are a perfect God, you would create it as a perfect creation. Why would God create an entity that is flawed, that can do wrong? And that this is a problem in philosophy and theology that you have to try to explain why this is the case. Some of the arguments is that the human beings are flawed so that they can develop free will. You know, angels are perfect in Christian theology, but they don't have free will. Now the question would be, if there is eternal damnation for those who choose wrong, is free will as important as having to pay such a huge price of being eternally damned to be in hell? You know, there is an inconsistency there, and this is a difficulty in theology. How do you explain that there is a possibility of doing evil, but if you do evil, then forever, for all eternity, you will be in a state of suffering. This gets solved, and we will see all this. I'm just presenting the main points that we are going to explore. This gets solved if instead of looking at a sudden creation, we think of a progressive manifestation from a unity, from a homogeneous source, which begins to differentiate. Therefore, anything complex that exists comes from a gradual, progressive process, and until that thing is fully developed, it will be imperfect. In the intermediate states, like for example, we can say that a child is an imperfect adult. Now, it is perfect in itself, but if we look at the final product, we say it is imperfect. The process of thinking is not fully developed, and the physical strength is not fully developed. And we don't question why is the child a flawed adult. We understand that the child is part of a process necessarily limited because of the stage of development. So same with the cosmos. If we look at the cosmos not as this sudden creation that could be made perfect from the very beginning, but as a natural, inescapable process of growth, then we can understand imperfection from a different point of view. Then the third idea, because these two ideas may sound like scientific. You know, science could agree, okay, there was a homogeneous source of the Big Bang, there is evolution, so that is more or less a scientific view. But there is a third view in the theosophical view that makes it spiritual or religious, if you want. That is, in the scientific view, they say there are random events in the universe. Everything comes by develops by random events and blind laws. So evolution, the mutation in the cells that power the evolution, the development of galaxies, all that happens by random events. When they try to do the statistics of this, it never works. The efficiency of the processes for them to happen randomly has to be very, very high in a way that we don't see in nature. So the theosophical view postulates that there is a purposeful and intelligent cosmos. Laws are intelligent. You know, this debate that we had in the US a few years ago about evolution versus creative intelligence or creative intelligent design. The theosophical view, I think, integrates the two. There is evolution, and there is an intelligence behind the evolution. Not creating, but the intelligence, every law in the universe, the instinct in animals, the intelligence that is speaking through this brain now and that is in you now, all this, there is a background, a fabric of intelligence in the cosmos, and each structure that develops is a channel for that intelligence.
Wow.
The degree of intelligence that
you understand what he's saying.
Yeah.
Saying instincts or human instincts is a level of intelligence that we don't look at as intelligence, but when the heart gives you a certain instinction, it's intelligence everywhere, basically.
Yeah, and I mean everything. This whole structure is intelligence within itself, but it's being expressed in the physical structure that it's put in, or that it's built into, like a lion, for instance. A lion will express the intelligence of the all as the way that a lion does.
Right. But and from their perspective, that's a hell of a level of intelligence going on there.
Yeah, it is.
Just from his normal instincts of being a lion.
Mm-hmm. And then you have the millions and millions and millions of different life forms that are different expressions of that, are different forms of that, that intelligence can express itself through in so many different aspects.
Shown
Mind-boggling.
the kind of structure. A rock has its own intelligence, but because the structure is so simple, it can show a very simple intelligence, just a response to the environment, to pressure and heat. Plants have their own intelligence, and animals and human beings and angels. So the idea is that there is an intelligence behind, and therefore, as we are going to see, this is an important point to understand why what we call evil or darkness is important. Actually, it is inevitable if there is intelligence in the cosmos. So let us start looking at the first point, the idea that God is only light. As we know at the beginning of the Gospel of John, there is the idea that the Word was first, the Logos. Now, the word Logos means many things, or can be translated in many ways. The original word in the Gospel is the Greek Logos. It means word, it means reason, it means intelligence. So we can translate it in different ways. And at the beginning, there was this intelligence. And that intelligence was the divine, was God. And the divine activity was within that intelligence. So we can think of the idea of the Logos, of the Word, in a more abstract way, like the Neoplatonists did. The Neoplatonists were
You there?
as I was saying, the fabric of the universe itself is intelligence, so that anything that appears is embodying that intelligence. Now, after saying that there is this intelligence embracing everything, John says that the light appears, this intelligence is life, and then the light appears, and the light shines in the darkness. This implies that there is a background of darkness from which the light appears. And we see this in the cosmos. Light is artificially created by stars, by electrical instruments. When we stop creating light artificially, all that is left is darkness. And this has a deep meaning, even from a mystical point of view, that we are going to see in the next talk. But the idea is that there is darkness, and within darkness, light appears. And then it is said that the darkness didn't understand the light. Now we can interpret darkness and light in the way of consciousness and non-consciousness, cognition and non-cognition. This is how some Christian mystics interpreted it, like in the famous Cloud of Unknowing, which we don't know who the author was, but it was a Christian monk. He would say that to know God, you have to go into a cloud of unknowing, where there is no knowledge, there is no understanding, there is no cognition, which is like the darkness that cannot comprehend the light. He says, do not think of God as being good. All that is great in an early stage of your spiritual development, he says. And he would say, but keep this teaching secret. These are only for you, because they were dangerous teachings. But, thinking of God as good and loving and powerful, that is all good, because it stimulates you to try to emulate that. But if you are going to know the essence of God, you have to leave all that behind. You have to leave cognition behind, because cognition is something of the mind, but there is a higher faculty. We will see all that better in the next talk. Now, the idea is that when light appears in this divine darkness and manifests, what happens when we shine a light and there are objects? Immediately, the objects cast a shadow. So the idea is that as soon as God manifests itself as light, the shadow is created. And I'm sure in later talks this will be dealt with applying to our psychology. So there is a motto in the Kabbalah, which is an esoteric tradition or approach within Judaism, that says Daemon est Deus inversus, which means the demon is God inverted. The demon is the shadow of God.
Boom!
The evil is the shadow of the goodness aspect of God. Here, both good and evil are aspects of God, which is how then Jung applied it, for the little that I know about the subject, to the human psychology. And as I said, we will have a very interesting talk about that. So the idea is that as soon as the good manifests, evil also manifests. And
Yes.
this is logical.
Right.
But
this is what the rest of humanity just don't want to accept.
Yeah.
They don't want to accept this. They want to think it's just all manipulative and things are just harmonious in the universe. No, the universe is full of harmony, but it's full of chaos too.
Yeah.
It's hard to accept if we think that evil is terrible. If we think that evil is something that should not be there, that there could be a universe without evil, then this is something difficult to accept. But as we are going to see, we can see how evil is doing a divine work. Actually, in the book of the Bible, in what Christians call the Old Testament, we can see how Satan is working along with God. Satan is the challenger, and God allowed Satan to work on Job. Job was the best of men in that area, the most upright man in the area, and because he was especially good, then he had the privilege of Satan coming and working with him. And we will see that what this means. So let's see
Said
what
privilege.
Blavatsky says about this idea of light and darkness from a divine perspective. She says absolute light is absolute darkness. You see, this is interesting. Light is originally dark. We see light brilliant because light is reflected upon objects. But for example, if there is empty space between the sun and the earth, you don't see light between the sun and the earth. You see the light only when the sunlight bounces off the atmosphere and things on earth. Life, before it interacts with anything, is dark. In a universe where there is nothing yet manifested, there is total darkness, which can be also complete light, absolute light. And as soon as something manifests, then that becomes shining, and that produces a shadow. So light, absolute light is absolute darkness, and vice versa. In fact, there is neither light nor darkness in the realms of truth. Good and evil are twins, the progenies of space and time. Good and evil come when manifestation begins, as I was saying.
Mm-hmm.
Under the sway of illusion, this separation between good and evil, she says, is an illusion. Of course, if we come to the physical aspect, there is a clear difference between good and evil. But as soon as we start questioning this, we start seeing that the boundaries begin to blur, and that actually what many times we think is evil, it is good. I'm sure the kids think that is evil or is a source of suffering that the parents put certain limits on them. But see, when the parents don't do that, many times the children develop in a wrong way that will be a source of suffering. So those things that they perceive as evil or the source of suffering may be what is making their lives better. And same with us. We tend to think that evil is what brings unpleasantness, and good is what brings something pleasant to my life or some pleasure. But these are illusions, and we will see a little more about that. Then Blavatsky says, separate good and evil by cutting off one from the other, and they will both die. Neither exists per se, since each has to be generated and created out of the other in order to come into being. Both must be known and appreciated before becoming objects of perception. Before we can perceive how good and evil are part of the divine, we need to understand the role of good and the role of evil. And that's what we are going to explore next. So we see like a war between good and evil on many levels. And we tend to interpret good and evil in this way. There are some religions that explain the world in terms of a war, a battle between the forces of good and evil. Now, Blavatsky says that the cosmos, and when she used the K for cosmos, she meant not only the physical aspect of the cosmos, but a wider cosmos in all its spiritual dimensions. In cosmos, the equilibrium must be preserved. The operations of the two contrary forces, let's say, produce harmony. You see, in our bodies, we have constantly forces that are destroying. That is what we call metabolism. We eat things, those things are destroyed, and there is energy that comes out of it. And we have the catabolism, which is those forces that build. When the forces that build and reproduce, that are the good forces, right, the light, when they go out of whack, we have cancer, for example. If the destructive forces set in more than the creative forces, then we have decay. So there must be an equilibrium of the two forces. Without one, the other, or without one, the whole organism could not be healthy. If we are going to grow, we need to destroy the structures to build new ones. So in Hinduism, there is a god that is many times said to be the source of destruction, Shiva. But Shiva is a god and is necessary, and is actually The patron of the yogis, Brahma is the creative god, more similar to the Christian God. Well, the yogis say, Brahman is okay, but we have little to do with Brahman. Our god is Shiva, the destroyer. Why? Because the idea is that if we are in a prison, if we are in an illusion, what we need is to break through, to break free, to break down the prison. Whatever is eternal can never be destroyed. Anything that can be destroyed is what is not eternal. So in their view, the spiritual path is a path of destroying in the right way, right? All these ideas can be misinterpreted and manipulated. But the idea is that even in the Christian tradition, you have the via negativa that several Christian mystics talk about, the negative way in which you get rid of this, you get rid of that, and then by getting rid of, you come to the essence of God. So in any case, the idea is that we need, for any entity, human being or the cosmos as a whole, needs a balance of both forces for that organism to exist. And then there is a letter from one of Blavatsky's teachers. As in the glorious fugues of the immortal Mozart, each part ceaselessly chases the other in harmonious discord on the paths of eternal progress, to meet and finally blend at the threshold of the pursued goal into one harmonious whole. This chord is the harmony of the universe. So there is something for evolution to take place, for growth to take place. There is a need for this apparent conflict. If, for example, you are a teenager and your arm is growing, if you look locally at your arm, you may see that at some point in the process of growing, there is distraction. If you live there, suppose that you are a cell that lives there, you begin to say, this is Armageddon. Everything is being destroyed. What are we going to do? But if you stop looking at what is happening locally and can see the whole, you see that that distraction is part of a greater process that is necessary. If not for that, as I was saying, there would not be growth. So many times we are afraid of what is going on in the world with all the problems that we have. But in the theosophical view, all these processes are part of the process of evolution. Now, that doesn't mean that we have to encourage evil. You know, like in a body, if there is more evil than it should be, or more distraction than it should be, then the body will be sick. So the constructive forces have also to be actively working. If both forces do what they have to do, the body will be healthy. So the idea, when we see the problems in the world, we should not be afraid of it. We should be active in doing good and trust that this is part of an overall process that is important for the growth of humanity, for the maturation of the human psyche. What is happening in our country, for example, right now, is not too different, I think, to what happens in our own psyche, with all the problems that we may have. But there are many elements in our psyche that we don't pay attention to. We favor other elements of our psyche, and we repress some things that are part of ourselves. And if this goes for too long, there will be a process of manifestation of those elements, which many times is a more destructive manifestation. If we have paid attention to every element in our psyche and integrate them in harmony, there is no need for an outbreak. And perhaps that's what we do not only in this country, but in the world in general. There are elements that we don't care about, we don't pay attention to. We just favor some other aspects of society. And sooner or later, those elements will react and come to this is what happened in the French Revolution, for the little that I know. So you see, the idea is that we need to recognize all the elements, we need to integrate them, and the conflict that arises is part of the process of growth. So even if we may not be happy with what is happening in the world, or with the clash between, the Islamic worldview and the Christian worldview, well, all this may be a process of healing if we approach it in the right way.
Wow.
So we should not be afraid of evil, but we should work actively in what we regard as good. So let us see the second. So this is the idea of if we exclude evil or darkness from the divine, what we have seen so far, then we generate a problem. Both light and darkness are part of the divine, and we will justify that as the talks goes on. Now let us come to the second point that I mentioned, the idea of evolution, not sudden perfect creation, but a gradual evolution. Blavatsky says perfection, to be fully such, must be born out of imperfection. The incorruptible must grow out of the corruptible, having the latter as its vehicle and basis and contrast. You see, I think in the Christian tradition, we see this idea in the parable of the prodigal son. The prodigal son was with the father, in the house of the father, and that was good. But then he was tempted by the world. There was a world out there that he wanted to know, that he felt drawn to. And he leaves the house of the father and he goes into the world and suffers and enjoys. Being in the house of my father is the right thing to do. This is my home. This is what I am supposed to do to the father. Now, there is a very important difference between the perfection. Let's say that being with the father is perfection. The inherent perfection is always corruptible. When we come back to the perception that and the perfection that came out of the corruption, let's say going into the world in this metaphor is the corruption. But when he comes back, the world is still there, but he's not tempted any longer to go into the world. He is in the same state of perfection in the house of the Father, but now is a self-conscious, chosen in a sense, perfection. So this is what Blavatsky is saying here. When things begin to manifest, they are inherently perfect. But in the process of differentiation, separation arises, conflict between the parts, identification with the parts against the whole. But through all this process of friction and conflict, the divine intelligence that is expressing through each of the parts realizes what it is to be perfect, realizes the unity that is underlying everything, and then that divine consciousness, which got fooled by the separation at the beginning of illusion, now it can live in the separation, but with a constant recognition of the unity. So this is again the idea that it is only through imperfection that an everlasting perfection can appear. We see many cultures have a wonderful culture with a lot of development, compassion, spirituality, and they all get corrupted. So we say we should go back to that. But if we simply go back to that, we will be corrupted again. What we need to go is to do is
Well, there we go again. What happened?
Oh, you got took out?
Yeah. Well, you got taken out. I'm still here. I'm still alive. Yeah, I got taken off.
Can you see the video?
I can just see me. And I see it still live.
In any given context.
Okay, there I am.
In this context, certain action may be wrong. In another context, the same action may be right. Like in a baby, it is right that the baby expects the whole environment to go around him, but it is wrong that an adult expects that. So you see, morality is relative to the process of evolution, to at what stage a society, a person, a world, at what stage an entity is, that will determine what kind of morality is right. And within that stage, there are things that are right and there are things that are wrong. So Annie Besant, another theosophist, she was a second national president, she says, that is right, which works with the divine.
Hey.
That which goes along with that movement is right, she says. That which goes against is wrong. So this is what she says. Everything that goes along with the purpose of evolution in the universe and forwards that evolution from the imperfect to the perfect, that is right. And that is wrong, which delays or frustrates that divine purpose and tends to push the universe back to the stage from which it is evolving. So when the teenager wants to live like a
What happened? Mm-hmm. Hey, I just got taken off again. You want to end it here now? It's been it's 2.5 hours. Hmm? I didn't hear you.
I said it's getting late anyway. So.
Yeah. It's gonna be so late until it's early.
Right.
Yeah. I think we started the Black History Month off right. I think we started the month off right for melanated people with the Gullah Wars. Uh-huh. All right.
well, aggression is innate.